In 2021, me and my UCLA tennis teammates decided to try pickleball for the first time. 3 years later, I've learned a ton of valuable tips that would have made a huge difference if I had known them from the start. So in this video, I'm gonna go over exactly what these concepts are so that you can improve as fast as possible. The first thing that you need to understand is that the middle line on the court does not matter. Aside from when you're hitting a serve and it needs to land in the box, this line does not really tell you much. And when I started playing, whenever I was at the net, it was super common for the ball to get blasted down the middle, and neither me or my partner was ready to handle it. But there's a simple solution to this, and it's called shading. All shading is the act of you and your partner shifting to one direction in unison. And there's a very easy way to know which way to shift. So when you and your partner are both at the kitchen, like we are here, you want to shift towards the ball. So if I was to hit to that side of the court, me and Kennedy are going to shift to where I'm now covering the middle and she's more so covering the line. And the reason for that is if the ball is over there and we're both up, they can't hit over here very hard. Maybe they can hit an angled drop, but they can't really blast the ball over here. Where they can hit the ball hard is down the middle and down the line. So we shift in that direction to cover those targets. The same thing applies to the other side. If I was to hit the ball over here, me and Kennedy are gonna shift this way so that we can do the reverse. So the point being, if I hit the ball over there, I shift and Kennedy doesn't, all of a sudden there's a big gap in the middle, and that leaves big space for your opponents to attack, which can make things tougher in terms of coverage at the kitchen. From the back of the court, the same rules of shading apply, except you flip things around. So if I'm to hit this way, me and Kennedy are actually gonna shift away, okay? And the reason for that is when we're back and our opponents are up, they're actually more of a threat with the angle. So when you hit to one side, you actually shift a little bit to cover the angle. So in this case, Kennedy will shift there to cover the angle, and I'll shift to cover the middle. I'm still covering the line too, but I don't need to be quite as ready for that because I can move there pretty quickly. And from the other side, the same thing applies. If I'm gonna hit the ball over here, I'm probably gonna wanna shift over to cover this angle so that I don't need to go for a big lunging shot if he hits one of those. Keep in mind though, shading from the front of the court is definitely more important than shading from the back of the court. From the back of the court, it's a lot more gradual. The next tip actually sort of builds off my first tip, and it's that when you're playing, you need to play the role of your side. So both the left side player and the right side player should not be playing the same way in a pickleball game if you want to play at the highest possible level. So if both you and your partner are righty, usually the left side player is more aggressive and the right side player is more passive. So if I'm the left side player, usually I'm gonna be the one that's shifting towards the middle to kill floater shots, and I'm usually gonna be the one that's being more aggressive because my forehand is in the middle, so it might be a little easier for me to do that. If I'm the right side player, I'm probably gonna be more passive and view my role as more of a position to set up the left side player so that they can be aggressive. Of course, this isn't always going to be the case. If you're the right side player, you can be aggressive, and if you're the left side player, you can be more passive. But generally, that's the way that you should be thinking about things if you want to play at the highest possible level. And of course, not every partnership is gonna be where both players are righty and the forehand is in the middle on the left side. But the moral of the story here is that you need to play the role that best suits your partner. So if you're playing with someone that's super aggressive, regardless of where you are, you might wanna be the more passive partner so that you can set them up. If you have two players that are being super aggressive the whole time, things might not work out super well. My third tip though is that you should start trying to use ernies. So an ernie is where you scale the kitchen to kill a ball that's floating towards the side of the court. And if you aren't using these shots, you're giving your opponents additional opportunities that they shouldn't have. So your opponent shouldn't be able to hit a really slow shot in this area without you trying to ernie it. So your two main opportunities to ernie are if your opponent hits a slow dink down the line like Kennedy's going to here. And the other opportunity is if your opponent hits a slow drop that goes more towards the side of the court. So in both cases, you're getting a slower ball that's passing the net somewhere around right here. And if you can pull these off against your opponent successfully, they're going to feel like the court is very small and they're gonna get nervous that you're going to do it again. So the technique of an ernie is really simple. You just need to jump with your inside leg over the kitchen, and while you're doing that, you need to hit the ball with your forehand. It's a little bit harder on the backhand side, but you can do the same thing if you're over there too. Generally though, most players are doing ernies on their forehand side, but if you can do this, your opponents will become scared of the fact that you're going to do it, and the court will feel smaller to them, and they'll probably make more errors as a result. And guys, if you're gonna try out the ernie, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. This will make it so YouTube keeps suggesting you more of the best pickleball videos so that you can keep getting better. The next tip that I have is called spin mirroring. So when you're hitting dinks or third shots in pickleball, you really need to be thinking about what spin your opponents are using. For instance, if Kennedy's hitting topspin, it's going to be a lot harder for me to hit topspin off of that topspin. And the reason for that is that if she hits topspin, the ball's spinning this way, and if I try to hit topspin on that, the ball is going to roll up off of my paddle. So if I try to hit topspin off of topspin, the ball will actually come up a little bit. You've probably felt this when you're playing, but the solution for this is actually very simple. If your opponent's hitting extreme topspin, your best way to counter that is by reversing that spin and hitting slice. So if Kennedy's hitting topspin dinks, and I'm having a hard time hitting topspin back, it's totally fine for me to be hitting my slice dink because I'm gonna have a lot more control. And the reverse applies too. If Kennedy's hitting slice dinks, this presents a good opportunity for me to use my topspin dinks. And the reason for that is because I don't need to work as hard to get a good amount of spin on the ball. So if she's hitting topspin, she's already sort of giving me that slice. And if she hits slice, she's already sort of giving me that ability to hit topspin. So when you're dinking with someone, you can be thinking about this, and the odds are you'll increase your consistency. And the same thing applies on your third shot too. So if your opponent hits a slice return, this presents a really good time to hit a topspin drop or a topspin drive because they're making it easier for you to hit that topspin because they're hitting slice, which is spinning in the same direction that your topspin would. If your opponent's hitting topspin returns though, and they're really deep, this is probably a better opportunity for you to hit slice on your third shot because you're not reversing the direction that that spin is going. If you try to hit extreme topspin off of your opponent's topspin, there's a good chance you might miss. It's not always gonna be the case, but if you're going for maximum consistency, you're probably better off using a slice drop in that instance. The next thing you need to understand is that if your opponent is giving you weak serves, you need to make them pay for it. So your goal as the returning player is to make things especially hard for the serving team to score. And if they're hitting weak serves, you should be adding some oomph to your return so that they don't have as easy of a time on their third shot. So sometimes you're gonna be playing players that serve super hard, and it's going to be really challenging to do much on your return, but some people just don't have that good of serve. And if you're playing somebody like that, what you want to do is two things. The first is you can go for a little bit more depth and more power if they're giving you a weak serve. So if I'm getting a weak serve, it's not that dangerous for me to aim really deep in the court and add more pace on the ball. The second thing that you should be doing is you should be adding topspin on your return. So if you're getting a really slow serve, it's very easy to add topspin, which as I just explained, that makes it really hard for them to use topspin on their third shot. So if you're getting weak serves, make your opponents pay with power, depth, and topspin, and it's going to be a lot harder for them to score. And guys, right now we're trying to get to 250,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you want to help us get there, head below the video and hit the subscribe button, and then YouTube will start to suggest you more of our videos so you can keep improving at the game. The next thing that you need to understand is that to improve at pickleball quick and to get to a high level, you need to be able to use resets. So for me as a tennis player, this is very counterintuitive and I didn't really get it super fast. But the point is, if your opponent's attacking you and you're in a bad position, you're better off just dropping the ball into the kitchen rather than trying to attack off of their attack where they can just kill you on the next shot. So by dropping the ball in the kitchen, I reset the rally, which gets me into a better position than I would have been had I tried to be aggressive. If I'm not the one in control, then I'm always going to be better off resetting the ball in the kitchen so that I can take control later in the rally like I just did there. But when do you go for resets? If your opponent attacks you and you're hitting the ball from a really low position or you're further back, these are your times that you should probably go for a reset. Because if my opponent attacks me and I'm hitting the ball right down here, I'm not gonna be able to do much off of that. My best bet is to just get the ball into the kitchen and reset the point. If I attack from that position, I'm just gonna be giving my opponent a high ball where they can do that and take control of the point. So when the ball's low or you're farther back and you're on defense, you're better off resetting the ball into the kitchen. One thing I'll say though is that if your paddle is covered in dead spots, it's going to be really hard to be consistent with your resets. And the reason for that is if you miss slightly off center, the ball's gonna die and you're gonna miss in the net. So to hit good resets, you need to get a very consistent amount of power regardless of where the ball hits your paddle. And the only way you're gonna make that happen is if you get a paddle that has a really big sweet spot. So we made our paddle the Sweet Spot Pro to be perfect for players that are trying to master resets and dinks and the rest of their soft game, because when you have a bigger sweet spot, it makes your power more consistent and it gives you a better ability to make the ball in the kitchen consistently regardless of where the ball hits on the paddle. So if you're looking for a paddle upgrade, head to our site now and use code LESSONS for $20 off, which will actually give you this paddle for $99.99, which is a way too low of a price for how good this paddle is. And it's just because of our Black Friday deal. So if you want to head to our site and get this paddle, check it out now. The next thing that you need to understand though to play at a high level is that you need to start using ATPs or around the post shots. And the reason for this is if you're not using ATPs, you're gonna be giving your opponents the ability to hit super extreme angles, which are really hard to respond to if you go for a dink. So if I don't use an ATP in that situation, I'm gonna be so stretched and I'm giving my opponent a dink that they can actually attack off of. So you're way better off going around the post there, because when you do that, you can do it super aggressively and it's really hard for your opponents to return that shot. So all you need to hit a good ATP is you need the ability to draw a line from where you're hitting the ball around the post into the court. So if I hit an ATP here, you'll see I can draw a line very easily around the post. If I try to hit an ATP from right here, I'm for sure gonna miss it in the net because I don't have the ability to draw a line around that post. So all you really have to hit that ATP is a shot where you're making contact with it somewhere out here, and it should be pretty easy to make it in every single time, as long as you get a little bit of practice on it. But the big thing that people get wrong is they try to go for ATPs way too close to the court where it's not even possible. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, if you have a shot out here, you should be going for that ATP every time, and you're gonna win more games. The next thing you need to understand to play at a high level is that you and your partner should be communicating as much as possible, especially in the beginning of the point, to make things more coordinated. So when you're returning, when you're doing this, you can actually use hand signals to make this happen. So the hand signals when you're returning look like this. Right now, Kennedy's gonna be signaling me to stay. So to do that, you use a closed fist. And all that means is that we're gonna return business as usual. So I'm gonna stay on my side and Kennedy's going to stay on her side. The next signal that you can use is called a switch. So if you look at Kennedy's hand, it's completely open. And this signals me that we're going to switch sides after I hit my return. So that looks like this. And pretty much the way that that works is right when I hit my return, she slides over and I run to her side so that I can play the left and she plays the right. The last signal you can use when you're returning is called a fake, where you open and close your hand like that. And what that means is that Kennedy's gonna pretend like she's switching, but in reality, she's gonna stay. So we both sort of fake that we're switching, we stay. That might cause our opponent to do something that they won't want to do and give us an advantage when we're returning. And guys, when you're serving, you can also communicate, but not with signals, with your voices. So if your opponent hits a return down the middle, you can say yours or mine to decide who's going to take that shot. So depending on who you think has a better chance at a good third, you can signal that by saying yours or mine. And the last thing that I've learned over the last 3 years, and that's really changed since I started, is that if you want to play at a high level, you need to be getting the most out of your serve, or else your opponents are going to punish you on their returns like I showed you earlier. So in this next video, I take my other sister, Kimmy, from beginner to an advanced server in the course of 15 minutes. So if you want to learn all the tips that I teach her, watch this.